Okorokoma wunim nyansa wutosa wutikomaya wutikonya Timasona wedim ton yeah. Masona wedim ton yeah. Welcome. We are told queer spaces, or we assume queer spaces are supposed to be free. Or at least I did. Free from shame, free from moral policing, free from surveillance of our bodies, free from religious purity culture. And yet, some of the most intense scrutiny of my sexuality did not come from straight society. It came from within queer spaces, queer-friendly spaces. Queer-friendly spaces with straight people in it. But yeah, queer spaces. There is something happening inside parts of LGBTQ plus spaces that nobody wants to name. A quiet return of purity politics. Not Christian purity, not heteronormative purity, queer purity. Where abstinence becomes moral superiority, where asexual discourse sometimes slides into sexual judgment, where polyamory is framed as reckless, where sexual openness is framed as irresponsible, where enjoying sex becomes suspect. Suspect? Yeah, suspect. And I want to be careful here. Asexual identity is real. Celibacy is valid. Abstinence is valid. But when personal boundaries turn into moral hierarchy, we have a problem. Because suddenly sexuality is ranked again, not straight versus gay, but pure versus promiscuous, disciplined versus indulgent, responsible versus reckless. We are marginalized for our sexuality, and then we recreate sexual shame inside our own spaces. That contradiction should alarm us. Now, add race. When your body is black and queer, sexuality is never neutral. Historically, black bodies have been hypersexualized, pathologized, linked to disease, framed as dangerous. That history doesn't disappear in queer spaces. It follows us. While in Finland, I encountered something that felt deeply invasive. My sexual health became a topic of speculation. My body became something to examine. There was entitlement, unspoken but present, over my sexual history and health. Conversations about disease floated around my presence in ways that were racialized. Safety language became suspicion, concern became interrogation, and the underlying message was familiar. The black body must be monitored. The black body must be evaluated. The African body is risk. That is not liberation. That is colonial residue. Let me be clear about the behaviors. People asked intrusive questions. People positioned themselves into my intimate life without invitation. People speculated about who I was seeing. People attempted to insert themselves sexually. When boundaries were set, social dynamics shifted. Access changed, energy changed, rooms changed. You begin to see how quickly intimacy becomes public property when you are visible. How quickly your body becomes community discourse. And when you refuse to participate in that openness, when you remain private, it becomes threatening. When this pattern repeats in different cities, in different communities, I'm talking Ghana, Colombia, different places, the toll is real. Now, speaking to your experience, you walk in focused on art, or maybe speaking still to my experience. You walk in focused on art, you leave managing fallout. You walk in private, you leave exposed. You walk in neutral, you leave aware that your body has been discussed without you. That destabilization accumulates. And when elders are present and do nothing to intervene, it normalizes the intrusion. Silence teaches the room what is acceptable. There is another uncomfortable layer. Some queer spaces pride themselves on giving purpose to less privileged queer people. They platform them, they showcase them, they make them visible. And visibility can be empowering. But visibility without protection is vulnerability. When young people, queer people, are groomed into artistry, activism, or public roles, but not warned about sexual politics, predatory and trafficking dynamics, power imbalances, racialized fetishization, that is not mentorship, that is exposure. Community must protect before it promotes, otherwise it begins to resemble something else. And we need to be brave enough to say that. Now add NGO structures to this. When funding enters the room, morality returns in new language. Respectable queer, healthy queer, disciplined queer, non-threatening queer. Sexual expression becomes something to manage, especially for Black queer people. But usually Black queer people from low privilege or who are underprivileged. Usually those from the global south, Africa specifically. Because visibility plus sexuality plus race becomes risk. So, containment happens socially, through whisper networks, through subtle distancing, through framing someone as too much. Not because they harmed anyone, because they are unapologetic. There is a difference between community safety and community surveillance. Safety tools are transparent, consensual, need to know. Surveillance is speculative, gossip-driven, entitled. When sexual health becomes public rumor instead of private responsibility, something is wrong. When someone's body becomes community property, something is wrong. When curiosity about someone's sex life outweighs curiosity about their art, or whatever they publicly stand in community for, something is wrong. How did we go from we deserve sexual liberation to we deserve to monitor each other? How did we inherit Puritan frameworks and simply repaint them rainbow? Why are we recreating moral superiority inside a community born from sexual marginalization? There is another layer to this Puritan turn inside queer spaces, and that is porn shaming. We are now in an era where men who watch porn are often spoken about as if they are inherently abusive. Porn becomes shorthand for misogyny, porn becomes shorthand for violence, porn becomes shorthand for moral decay. And I want to be very careful here. Yes, porn can be abusive. Yes, porn can be weaponized inside relationships. Yes, non-consensual porn used inside marriage or partnership can become coercive and harmful. But lumping all porn use into abuse is intellectually lazy. And when that laziness becomes ideology, it becomes dangerous. Because now we are not analyzing behavior, we are moralizing desire. There are men who are outcasts, not because they are violent, but because they are not desired. Think unconventionally beautiful men. Think, sorry to say, micro penis. Men whose bodies do not meet aesthetic norms, men who are shamed for size, men who are shamed for softness, men who are shamed for awkwardness. Not incels, not men who hate women, just men who are unwanted. And for some of them, porn becomes the only accessible avenue for sexual expression. Now add geography. If you are queer and raised in a place where your sexuality is criminalized or violently suppressed, the likelihood of safe partnership is slim to none. Porn becomes survival. Porn becomes exploration. Porn becomes a private rehearsal for a self that has nowhere else to exist. So when we flatten our porn use into pathology, and especially when we attach it exclusively to men, we are reproducing gendered shame under progressive language. It is hypocritical because queer liberation cannot exist if we repackage sexual shame as virtue. Sexual ethics must be about consent, mutuality, harm, and power, not about constructing purity hierarchies. Now, let's talk about dating apps. Dating apps are not just hookup platforms. For many of us, especially visible queer people, they are community spaces. They are political spaces. They are educational spaces. I do most of my advocacy on dating apps. HIV education, conversations about queerness, encouraging people to accept themselves, dismantling stigma in real time. I show my face. I am visible. And visibility on dating apps is different from visibility on stage because dating apps collapse intimacy and community into the same interference. People hide behind blank profiles, people probe anonymously, people gather information they would never ask for face to face. People play games with identity. When you're visible, your presence becomes searchable, screenshotable, discussable. Your private life becomes semi-public by proximity. And when there is already a culture of moral scrutiny inside the community, dating apps become fertile ground for both formal and informal surveillance. Organized networks. Think cinematic spy plots. And anonymous curiosity weaponized. Profiles that appear only to ask questions. People who would never approach you publicly, gathering private information quietly, whether for personal use or for institutional use. And because it is digital, it feels deniable. But the cumulative effect is destabilizing because now your sexuality is not just lived, it is observed. Not through safety tools, not through mutual transparency, but through entitlement. And when that entitlement intersects with race, visibility, and politics, it intensifies. the black visible queer body becomes something to monitor, something to test, something to evaluate. And again, this is not liberation. This is control in softer clothing. So, when we talk about Puritan queer culture, we are not just talking about celibacy or abstinence. We are talking about moral hierarchies inside liberation movements, sexual shame disguised as ethics, racialized scrutiny of black queer bodies, entitlement to private histories, digital environments amplifying informal monitoring, and the policing of desire in spaces that claim freedom. If we are not careful, we will recreate the very structures that tried to discipline us. In fact, we've recreated it already, because I am living testimony of that kind of harm, abuse, or surveillance. Again, and let me phrase it like it's something that will happen in the future. If we are not careful, we will recreate the very structures that tried to discipline us. Not with churches, not with colonial law, but with progressive language. Queer liberation cannot mean you are free, but only if your sexuality looks respectable. You are safe, but only if your desire is contained. You are visible, but only if you are morally acceptable. That is not freedom. That is curation. And I refuse curated existence. Because who do you think you are? By the Fireside. See you next time.